wait for the stream to fire up all across the internet, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm excited about it. We've got some fun stuff to talk about today, and we want to make sure that we're online before we do. So we're almost there. It looks like YouTube is alive and well, so let's get started. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have represented thousands of good people facing criminal charges. And throughout our time in practice, we have seen a lot of problems with our justice system. I'm talking about misconduct involving the police. We have prosecutors behaving poorly. We have judges not particularly interested in a little thing called justice. And it all starts with the politicians, the people at the top, the ones who write the rules and pass the laws that they expect you and me to follow, but sometimes have a little bit of difficulty doing so themselves. That's why we started this show called Watching the Watchers, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency back down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. And we're grateful that you are here and with us today because we've got some good stuff to get into. First and foremost, Donald Trump is being sued by a civil rights organization over the use of the word Chinese virus and some other interesting turns of phrase to describe COVID-19. And we're going to go through this lawsuit because it is a 53-page complaint. We're not going to read the whole thing. We're just going to go through some of the highlights. But it is interesting. It's sort of another lawsuit against the former president, and we're going to see what is to come of this. So then we're going to talk about the Capitol Hill rioter, guy by the name of Earle Sullivan. We've talked about him previously. He was the guy that sold the footage of him sort of going into the Capitol building back on January 6th to the news media for something like $70,000. I think we talked about that on this channel. I think one was 35 grand to NBC, another one 35 grand to somebody else, just for some kind of, some rough cell phone footage of him getting into the Capitol building. Well, the government is now seizing that money. So something like $90,000 has been seized from Sullivan. He's out of custody. His case is still pending. Criminal charges are moving forward against him, and he's trying to get that money back. He says, I need it to live. I need it to pay my bills, pay my rent, and of course to support my legal fees. The government is fighting that, and so we're going to see what happens. The prosecution came out today with a big long memo, or not today, but very recently, with a big long memo detailing why they're saying he should not get that $90,000 back, and so we want to go through that because it is a little bit fun. Then we're going to be taking a look at Governor Whitmer. If you saw this over the weekend, she was busted breaking her own COVID regulations at a restaurant. She went to a dive bar with a number of other friends. And for those of you who do not live in Michigan, there is still a lockdown order, or I don't know if there's a lockdown order, but there's still some regulations. Let me just be careful about that. Still some regulations saying that when you go out to a restaurant, apparently you're supposed to have 6 people per table. Big Gretchen Rona had more than 6 people. Not too good. So she got into a little bit of trouble over that, and we'll have fun with that because nothing like calling out the double standards when you see them. We love to have fun with that. If you want to be a part of the show and join in on the fun, the place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, which is where we take questions. If you go over there right now, if you type that into your web browser, you're going to see that there's a live chat happening right now. And so if you want to ask a question or drop a comment or even lob a criticism my direction, feel free to do that. You can go and support the show and then ask your questions there. Before we get into the news of the day, I want to also thank those of you who came to the monthly meetup over on Locals. Nice turnout. We had over 30 people who showed up, and so it was a lot of fun. It was me bumbling around with some technology. Apparently, I selected the wrong Zoom function. So we had a webinar going so I could hear from people but couldn't see people, but they could see me and we could sort of hear from everybody. But we got a lot of great questions out, and it was really awesome to sort of put a voice. We couldn't put a face to a name yet. We're going to get that fixed on the next one, but to put a voice to a name, to hear from some of you out there who have been supporting us for a long time over at Locals and here on this channel. It was a lot of fun, a lot of great questions, good conversations, and I sort of finished that night like with some really serious existential questions about, what does my future look like? And am I going to, be sort of doubling down on some of this content? Am I going to be, reorienting in other areas, whether it comes to the law or, what does the future hold? And I really appreciate the encouragement. I appreciate all the support, and I really appreciate, the great questions and the conversations that we're having. I mean, people asked, there's some questions about the death penalty and about alcoholism and about reconciling all of these complex issues that we talk about on a regular basis. And it was just so much fun. I mean, it's exactly what my vision was for this community. It's sort of people who want to talk about some of the complex issues and dive in at a little bit of a deeper level. And so it was just the first monthly meetup, very low stress. And I think it was very friendly. Everybody had their dinner table manners there. And it was just a lot of fun. And so I'm looking forward to sort of growing this and doing more of them and building a bit of a more close-knit community. And I'm still trying to sort out how to scale that because it's only so scalable. But but the point is there's a lot of cool things happening over there, and I'm very grateful for it. It really means the world to me. We had a lot of fun. Thank you to all of you who showed up, and there was even a little bit of a goodie that we gave away. Feel free to share that goodie with other people who were not able to make it. Those of you who were there and got that little bit of a love there. So, all right. So enough of that. Thanks once again to everybody over at Locals. If you want to join up and be a part of that, you can check out watchingthewatchers.locals.com. All right. So let's get into the news of the day. Donald Trump is facing a new lawsuit. He's got a lot of legal things floating around right now in his world, but there is a new lawsuit that is being filed against him from the Chinese American Civil Rights Coalition. And it's specific to some language that Donald Trump was using back when he was president, specifically when he was using the phrase China virus and the Kung flu. So we're going to get some background here from Insider, businessinsider.com. It says here that a Chinese American civil rights group is suing Trump for $22.9 million. That is a lot of money. It's not that much money. George Floyd got more than that. But 22.9, still pretty hefty for calling COVID-19 the China virus and the Kung flu. That's $1 for each Asian American and Pacific Islander living in the U.S. So they want a lot of money. Former President Trump is facing the lawsuit. Civil rights group is arguing that the use of the derogatory terms for the coronavirus has led to a rise in violence against Asian American and Pacific Islanders. And we are seeing, sort of a slew of news stories covering this. And it does feel like, just in terms of coverage, it feels like that there is more of this out there. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. The former president has famously used terms such as the Chinese virus, the China virus, the Wuhan flu, and Kung flu to describe COVID-19. The Chinese American Civil Rights Coalition is suing Trump for roughly $22.9 million or $1 for every single Asian American and Pacific Islander. The money is going to be used to establish, if they win, a museum showcasing AAPI contributions to the U.S. In the recent months, there's been a spike against Asian Americans. Most notably in March, there was a fatal shooting at 3 Atlanta area spas that left 8 dead, including 6 Asian women. I wasn't sure, did we ever figure out whether that was race related or was that just sort of a massage parlor situation? We have in April, more than 80% of Asian Americans said violence against them is on the rise. 1 in 5 of those surveys blamed Trump for the rising violence. Experts told Insider that the disrespectful monikers for those coronavirus used by Trump perpetuate dangerous microaggressions against the AAPI communities. These microaggressions, it's like if you use the wrong, pronoun or something like that. I think that's probably a major aggression right now. I think that used to be a microaggression, but now that's a major macro aggression. And so some of the microaggressions, we've seen those words like, don't use the word baby if you're going to be talking about something that is sort of like baby-like behavior. Use the word like infantile, cognizant, something, right? They mash all these things together and it doesn't make any sense. It's these microaggressions that everybody's on high alert about. Trump's first tweet about a Chinese virus resulted in a surge of anti-Asian hashtags on Twitter. Close-up photos of President Donald Trump's prepared remarks for a White House briefing in March revealed the former president's penchant for offensive terms. He crossed out part of the phrase coronavirus and altered it to Chinese virus, according to Sonam Sheth. And I remember this specifically, and I'm going to play a clip here. I'm going to try to keep it together on this next clip, but I've watched this clip. I'm not kidding you, probably 100 times, and I don't know why I think it is so hilarious. Actually, I do know why. I'm going to explain it. So it's this clip. I may have played it on the show before. Maybe not. This is actually not a good version of the clip because we have a hard cut right at the key moments, but I'm still going to play it anyways. You can look up the whole clip if you want. It's really, I've always thought it was hysterical. So here is Donald Trump. This is this reporter who is yelling at him over the use of the term the Chinese virus. And so she goes on this thing, isn't it racist? Can't you understand what a problem this is? You're the president. Maybe you should not use that phrase. And Donald Trump says, oh, no, it's not racist at all. Why do I call it the Chinese virus? Because it came from China. And if you recall, Donald Trump, the way he says China, he says it hard. He says China. And I've always sort of had the suspicion that he does that on purpose just to sort of irk people, just to kind of twist the knife a little bit. A lot of people think that Donald Trump is not self-aware enough, that he doesn't understand his personality and his shtick, this sort of orange guy who doesn't ever back down, who's always aggressive, win. The idea is that he's out of touch with that. He doesn't even recognize the sort of caricature of himself. I've never bought that. I think that he understands fully what he's doing, as I think most politicians do, and celebrities and actors and actresses and lawyers and doctors. We all have these different personas and these different masks that we wear. Whether or not you recognize it or not, you do it, right? You don't act the same way in front of your mother that you do on a first date. And so you act as a president when you're president, and you act as a reality TV person when you're a reality TV person, and you carry over some of those winning characteristics from one endeavor to the next. And so even when Donald Trump was president and he was doing some of these, kind of goofy things or some of these personality quirks, there would be moments when I would say he's doing that on purpose. He knows that he is irritating everybody in this White House press room, and he's just doing it. I'm sure him and Pence are going back behind the wall, back behind the doors after the conclusion of this and going, oh, that was good, right? Kind of giving each other the fist bump. And this felt like one of those moments. And it's specifically when he says China, and he says it like that. He says China. And you can't see it in this clip because there's a hard cut, but I want you to listen for it. Maybe we'll play it twice. But he says it, and if you watch this full clip in like slow motion, you can zoom this up on your big screen, put it on your 55-inch whatever, and watch Trump's micro expressions in his face, not aggressions, expressions. When he says China, he kind of goes like this. He goes like, oh, that was a good one. Like he knows that felt good when he goes China. He goes, oh, that's a good one. And then he carries on with his thought. And there's just a split second hair trigger just moment where he goes, that was a good China. And he kind of lets it just sit there for a minute before he picks back up. So see if you can catch it. If not, watch the whole thing. I'm going to try to keep it together. Usually this clip sends me rolling, but I'm on presentation mode today. So we're going to bear through this one. Here it is.
Why do you keep calling this the Chinese virus? There are reports of dozens of incidents of bias against Chinese Americans in this country. Your own aide, Secretary Azar, says he does not use this term. He says ethnicity does not cause the virus. Why do you keep using this? A lot of people say it's racist.
It's not racist at all. No, not at all. It comes from China. That's why. Comes from China. I want to be accurate.
Yeah,
please, John. Please.
Are you
I have great love for all of the people from our country. But as you know, China tried to say at one point, maybe they stopped now, that it was caused by American soldiers. That can't happen. It's not going to happen. Not as long as I'm president. It comes from China.
So watch the full thing. Very, very good. I'm not going to play it again because probably people think I'm out of my mind right now. But he says China and he cuts it and he has this little bit of he goes, it's pretty good. Pretty good China right there. Liked how that one landed. Then he just picks up with the rest of his thought. So enough of that. Here is the actual lawsuit. So this is the complaint. This was filed last week on May 20th. 53 pages. We are not going to go through all 53 pages of this, but I do want to show you what is happening here because it is interesting. We have the Chinese American Civil Rights Coalition against Donald Trump, former capacity as the president, being filed out of SDNY, Southern District of New York. I think this is the same jurisdiction that Miss Ghislaine Maxwell's in, so a lot of activity out of this court. We have the parties. The plaintiff is a nonprofit organization. That is the Chinese Civil Rights Organization. Then we have Donald Trump, former capacity as president, Why are they suing him? For his defamatory slanders and his libels since COVID-19 broke out, and for his private citizen, as a private citizen, for the defamatory statements since leaving the Oval Office. And so here is the crux of the complaint. Let me just point out a couple quick things. Took the oath of office in 2017, and you're going to notice, I really actually have a lot of criticisms with this complaint, not because of the political sort of character of it, more so, but just because it's sort of over the top. I think it's actually just poorly written, very dramatic. I don't like dramatic legal briefs. Just let's get, what are the issues? Let's not make a big, dramatic heyday about it. This office has always come with the inherited duty and the responsibility for every incumbent since Washington. So I don't even know what that's, okay. Since March 16, 2020, and as recently as March 16th, defendant has repeatedly used the terms such as Chinese virus, China virus, Wuhan virus, Kung flu virus, and hereinafter referred to as the statements in his official capacity. He justified the use of these statements by insisting, we just heard this clip, quote, because it comes from China. I want to be accurate, he said. Hence, defendant announced unequivocally to the world that he used these words as factual statements rather than opinions. And so let's pay close attention to this. So they're going to go through this complaint. They're going to be very upset that Donald Trump made all of these statements because he was using them as facts. Well, then they're going to come out and say, well, Donald Trump was calling it the Chinese virus. Well, there's no evidence that it came from China, but we also don't know where it came from. So if you don't know where it came from, then how do you know that it didn't come from China? So we're going to see they're very angry at Donald Trump for making certain claims that they're trying to connect to factual inaccuracies. And what they're going to show us is that they can't disprove the factual inaccuracies. So how is it defamatory or libelous if it might even be true, right? It might actually be the truth, because we just know if you haven't seen this video, I put out an hour and 20-minute long video on channel number 2. Link is in the description below, going through the Nicholas Wade article for the COVID-19 escape theory that came out of the theory goes that there are these 4 factors that Nicholas Wade analyzed that show that the virus came from the Wuhan lab of virology and not emerging from nature. So if we're going to be having this conversation, this civil rights organization is saying, well, Donald Trump was making stuff up when he said that it came from China. But now we're looking at it and we're saying, well, there's actually some serious inquiry happening. We're even seeing Dr. Fauci out now saying, well, maybe it's worth a second look. Defendants, according to this complaint, it says these words are not supported by the known facts. So they're calling these facts, okay? They're saying Trump's words are not supported by these facts. That the zoonotic virus is not originated from human. So we have some language issues. It transmits from one person to another, regardless of gender, age, race, or ethnicity. And according to WHO reports and the CDC bulletins, the origin of the virus was unknown when the defendant used these words in March, and still remains unknown on March 16th when the defendant repeated it again. So now they're trying to tie this back to the time in which he said it. They're saying he should have used a more accurate statement. It would have been like the first outbreak of COVID-19 occurred in China, okay? Not that it came from China. So you can see here in this complaint itself, they're unhappy about this because it comes from China. I want to be accurate. What they would have preferred, he said, would have been the first outbreak of COVID occurred in China. Okay, so I mean that sounds pretty close. Like the virus came from China. The first one would have come from China. They said they just want to say the outbreak occurred in China. All right. Nevertheless, they say the defendant's intention was never about the truth because he said it 19, 20, 22 different names. Whatever you want to call it, he said. Meanwhile, defendant has stubbornly disregarded the official terminology and guidelines from the World Health Organization. Defendant has always bragged about the fact that he has the largest group of followers, something like 100 million people. Not anymore. He's not on Twitter anymore. Duty comes with authority. See this dramatic language? Responsibility comes with power. Holding the most powerful office in the country, defendant recklessly neglected his official duty to represent all Americans. Okay, somebody needs to proofread this. Defendant recklessly neglected his official duty? Defendant reckless neglected. Okay, goes on. The presidential immunity shall not apply in this case because making defamation statements against one group of citizens is not part of official duty, and the Constitution has never enumerated such power. So when you see like legal language like this, that is, there's no citation here. It's just sort of broad statements making broad claims. Truth matters. Words have consequences, ... especially from those in powerful and influential positions. Against the well-published World Health Organization guidelines, defendant lied on behalf of the members of the lawsuit, Chinese Americans. Here we go. CDC gives us a bulletin, September 1, 2020. Animal coronaviruses rarely infect people and then spread between people, according to this lawsuit. This occurred with 2 earlier coronaviruses. So they talk about MERS, they talk about SARS, then SARS-CoV-2. It is a beta coronavirus like SARS and like MERS, according to them. These viruses have their origins in bats. No citation, no nothing there. Although we do not know the exact source of the current outbreak, we know that it originally came from an animal, likely a bat. So how can these two statements, how can this sentence even reconcile with itself? So if we don't know the exact source of the current outbreak, then how can we know that it came from an animal, likely a bat? Right. So I don't know if this is medically accurate or not. Right. I don't even know. But I'm just saying, as a judge or as somebody reading this, you go, if you don't know the source, then you're just speculating. Okay. So it's not even a fact here. All right. The sequence from U.S. patients are similar to the one that China initially posed, suggesting a likely single recent emergence of this virus from an animal reservoir. So then they go back to the CDC bulletin. You're going to see here they've got all these different remarks listed out. United States will be powerfully supporting those industries like airlines that are particularly affected by the Chinese virus, right? So these are all different tweets from Trump. Here's another one, March 17th. We see Chinese virus here. We see it here. We see it here. I will be having a news conference today to discuss the FDA concerning the Chinese virus. I have a press conference over here, right? And he's going on and on. Here are some screenshots. These are also listed, I think, as individual exhibits in the lawsuit. So European countries are getting clobbered by the China virus. Fake news doesn't report this. And so all of these are just listed in the lawsuit, right? One by one, 88, 89, 90, all the way through 93. Then what they're going to do is go into why they should win this. You know, what's the problem with this? So they're documenting what happened here. Donald Trump is the president. He's got all of these responsibilities, and he's used this word that is very defamatory because they're trying to explain, well, we don't even know where it came from, but we know that it didn't come from something. They don't even know. We have a contradictory statement. Although we don't know what the source is, we do know that it came from an animal, probably a bat. But if you don't know, then why are you speculating? So we have a lot of contradiction here. Now they're going to tell us why they should win this. They tell us that defamation is a statement that injures a third party's reputation. The tort of defamation includes both libel and slander. They say you need a false statement purporting to be fact. So that, I mean, right there, you know, I don't know, right, if it actually did come from China, and he calls it the Chinese virus, and his statement is very similar to what they wanted him to say. Their statement was there was an outbreak that originally came from China. He said it came from China. We just played the video. So a false statement purporting to be fact, but they're agreeing with the fact. They're agreeing with his statement. All right, what else do they need? Publication or communication. He's a president. He communicates a lot. Fault amounting to at least negligence. So he screwed up. He shouldn't have said it. Or damages and some harm caused by the person who is the subject of the statement. So how do they prove that every one of those 22.9 million Asian American and Pacific Islanders, how do we prove that they were harmed or that they had some sort of damages? We don't really, right? We can't really know that. So they're just sort of making up a number, one for every person in the population. All right. So just on the face of that, doesn't look like a very strong complaint, but let's continue to go through it just for a little bit and see what else is happening here. Let's see. It says labeling the statement an opinion does not automatically make it an opinion. They also say that the defendant's statements are not true. Whenever questioning why using Chinese virus and other similar terms, Trump said that it came from China. And he said, I want to be accurate. However, defendant has more than once said the virus has 19, 20, 22 different names, whatever you want to call it, at campaign rallies to his supporters. And he says, and this says such racially charged and reckless rhetoric demonstrates his intention when using these inflammatory words was not about the truth at all. So they're saying that So here then, false statements purporting to be fact. So let's see how they break down that element. They present a timeline. We have a comparison to the European flu, to the Spanish flu. We've got something about Apple in here. The origin of the virus was unknown 1 year ago and still remains unknown at the present. The Director of National Intelligence testified on April 14th that the community does not know exactly where, when, or how COVID-19 was transmitted initially. The accurate statement would have been the virus originally came from an animal rather than human. That's not true, right? So they're saying that in order for Trump's statements to not breach this element, okay, in order for it to be defamation, in order for them to succeed in a defamation case against Trump, they got to prove that there was a false statement that he made that was purporting to be fact. This is from their document. They are even acknowledging this. So let's just use their own standards and say they've got to prove a false statement. Well, then they come over here and they say that the intelligence community does not know exactly where, when, or how the COVID-19 was transmitted initially. So how can anything that Trump said then be false? Because if they don't know, then it could easily be true. They're saying that an accurate statement would have been the virus originally came from an animal rather than human. That is not a known fact. That is not a proven known fact. That is still up for debate. So anything that Trump says related to that cannot automatically be a false statement purporting to be fact because it's not a known fact. They want you to think it is, but it's not. Where the virus started from remains unknown. More or less, I think there's a consensus that it started in Wuhan, which is in China. The first outbreak of the virus took place in China, and the virus spread from one person to another, regardless of race and ethnicity. So, okay, so that's fine. Yeah, number 4 is true, but what does that have to do with any of the elements of defamation? It doesn't have anything to do with any of it. So, oh my goodness, this is bad. Let's continue on. They say the First Amendment does not apply in this case. This would be good. The First Amendment protects ordinary individuals from government censorship. It does. All right. All right. Okay. So that's what the First Amendment means. Okay. If an ordinary individual says Chinese virus or other similar terms, the plaintiff would not file this lawsuit because such individual has no power, no command of federal agencies, no daily intelligence reports, no bully pulpit, no platforms, no followers. Therefore, he has no duty, no responsibility, very little impact or influence. So this person, whoever is drafting this document, has absolutely no idea what they're doing. This is kind of hysterical. We are now on page 43. And there's no citations. So there's nothing. What are they? Oh my gosh, this is hysterical. Our founding fathers intended for the First Amendment to protect ordinary people and the press from dictators, rather than the First Amendment to allow defendant, who held the most powerful constitutional office, to knowingly and intentionally repeated lies and spread defamatory statements. Therefore, the First Amendment does not apply to the defendant in this case. Oh my gosh, this is so great. I can't even take it. Oh my gosh. Anybody who's in law school or any other lawyer watching this right now, you got to be kidding me. Justice Powell wrote for the court. Look at this. No citations, nothing. Notably, out of perimeter, Justice Powell also wrote not a single citation in this whole document. Defamation per se. Defendant has acted with fault, negligence, and actual malice. In his campaign speeches, more than once showed his intention was never about that. So they're repeating themselves now. All right. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Any laws, any count 3, negligent infliction of emotional distress. Oh my gosh, this is bad. All right, so what do they want? Plaintiff respectfully says that they want $1 as an apology to every Asian American living in the U.S., 22.9 million in total. They want punitive damages. They want reasonable and necessary attorney's fees. They want the cost of the suit. And then they want plaintiff will donate the award to establish a museum that will showcase the history of their communities and their contribution to the United States. So this is an actual lawyer, it looks like. Yu Zhi, who's a lawyer somewhere. YL3022, attorneys for plaintiff. I don't know what that bar number is. I don't know if that is a New York bar number. I mean, I've got 2 bar numbers. I've got one in Arizona and one in California, and they both are numbers, not YL in front of it. Maybe that's her name. Those are her initials. So YL3022. I don't know if she's licensed in New York or someplace else, but very curious, right? Claiming that there are a lot of facts in there that haven't been proven facts, and saying that Donald Trump was saying stuff that was not factual when we don't have a any evidence of that. If something is not true, you got to know what the truth about that issue is. And we don't know what the truth about the origin of the coronavirus is. So if Donald Trump made a position, you can't disprove that because there's no evidence to disprove it. So how can defamation stand if he hasn't been proven to have said anything false yet? Can't. And there's more information coming out that there may be some truth behind this. Intelligence on sick staff at the Wuhan lab fuels debate over the origin of the virus. This is coming over from the Wall Street Journal. Shortly before November 2019, report says researchers went to the hospital before the confirmed outbreak. Written by Michael Gordon, Strobel, and Hinshaw, posted yesterday. Washington, 3 researchers from China's Wuhan Institute of Virology became sick. In November 2019, they sought hospital care, according to a previously undisclosed U.S. intelligence report that could add weight to growing calls for a further probe. Details of the report go beyond a State Department fact sheet issued during the final days of the Trump administration, which said that several researchers at a lab had symptoms consistent with COVID and common seasonal illness. The disclosure of a number of researchers and the timing are raising questions. Everybody's asking questions about this. Let's jump into some questions. Let's finish up here. We're going to get to some questions a little bit quicker on this story here because we covered a lot of this. So I did go through some of this in in a long video on channel number 2, really breaking down this Nicholas Wade article. He talks about these 3 different factors that he analyzes that he uses to come to a conclusion about the origin of the coronavirus. One is sort of geographical proximity. So he talks about these caves and, the origin of a virus that would have come from bats from a cave, deep in China. There would be evidence that the coronavirus infected people in that locality, but they didn't. It was something like 1,500 miles away in Wuhan where it first started. So he goes through that and he sort of compares and contrasts this. He also looks at some other very important physical traits within the virus. And I'm not a medical doctor, but he talks about furin cleavage sites and about this looks like sort of a Frankenstein virus. It would be like the analogy that I use in that other video is specifically about when we're talking about Frankenstein, we're talking about this creature that was cobbled together from all different parts of a human body. Take the head, take the torso, take some arms, take some legs, stitch them all up. You've got Frankenstein. Well, when you do that, you sort of make the connection, you sever and put the pieces back together at different junctures, right? So you would do it at the neck, you would do it at the shoulder, you'd pull the arm off at the shoulder blade, because that kind of makes logical sense. We wouldn't try to connect it, right here midway in the bicep or whatever this bone is called. It doesn't make any sense to splice it here. You wouldn't connect a head in the middle of the head. You would connect it at the neck. Well, that's what the coronavirus sort of looks like. There's this very interesting splice right in the virus in a weird spot that makes sense that if you were going to be manufacturing one of these things, that's where you would splice it together. So I go through all of that in the video, and a lot of people are asking questions about this. And so if Donald Trump is being sued for making stuff up, well, they got to show that he made stuff up. They can't show that in fact, maybe it's actually true. Maybe everything he said was in fact true. Even Dr. Fauci is out there now talking about a second investigation. So let's take a look at some questions now coming over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. First up in the House, we have Dr. Renal MD in the House. Says, in the pleadings, they say that we represent all Asians. Wouldn't that mean an automatic dismissal due to standing? SARS-CoV-2 came from China. Wouldn't they stipulate to that? Seems like such a frivolous lawsuit. It shouldn't even last a minute. You're right, NY. I don't think that it will. I think it's hilarious that this even got as far as it did. I saw this on a couple different news headlines today. Trump's being sued again. Really excited about it. And I opened it up and I'm like, did somebody just did some intern draft this up and just file it? Is that even a licensed attorney? I don't know. Would be worth looking up. But you're right. Yeah, I mean, they can't is this a class action lawsuit? Are they representing all Asian Americans and they're asking for damages on behalf of all Asian Americans? I mean, the lawsuit is going to get tossed immediately, but it was fun to sort of go through that. Pinky number 2 is in the House. Says, what about these names? The West Nile virus, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, Middle East respiratory syndrome, or MERS, also called the camel flu. Pinky, you're going to get me canceled, but I'm going to keep reading. German measles, Spanish flu. There is a reason to believe Fauci is in trouble for moving the gain-of-function research from an American lab to a World Health Organization lab or a China lab. Yeah, I think there's a good reason for that. And have you noticed his about face? Somebody should check on Fauci because he's been wearing a mask a long time. Somebody probably wants to get him a neck brace because he's kind of getting whiplash. He's kind of just changing positions all over the place. Mask up, and even if you're vaccinated. Oh, forgot, just kidding. Don't have to do that anymore. There is no evidence that this virus emerged from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Whoop, just kidding. It's probably worth an inquiry now. Remember when he was screaming at Rand Paul, no, we never did anything. Now he's out over the weekend going, yeah, that's actually a good question. We should probably be looking into that. So I'm concerned about his neck because he's kind of jerking us all over the place. I hope he's doing okay. We have NY Renal MD says, even this day, Democrats disparage Russians with no evidence. This is a garbage lawsuit. Even if he was lying, he can if he wants. What are their damages? I know. It's hilarious. And Liberty or Death in law school right now. He says, it feels like I'm sitting back in Civ Pro. This suit is a classic example of a Rule 11 motion against the attorney that filed this. Dismissal under 12b-6 for failure to state a claim is what that rule says. Look, I call it the Kung Flu on my YouTube channel, my locals, and anywhere I can. I'm so scared they will sue me as well. I know, Liberty, you're probably sitting there going, are you serious right now that a lawyer wrote that? Jeremy Matrita says the naming of illnesses by locality has been long established commonality. The West Nile virus was named after the West Nile district of Uganda, discovered in 1937. Lyme disease was named after Lyme, Connecticut. Ebola, hemorrhagic fever, from the Ebola River in Zaire in Central Africa. MERS was an acronym for Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, which originated from Saudi Arabia in 2012, to name a few. Wow. What a great comment, Jeremy. That was very interesting. I had no idea about any of that. So MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. Well, maybe, I wonder if they sued anybody and recovered damages for every single Middle Easterner in the United States. $1 that's going to be donated to a fund, to a museum somewhere. Good job. Leafy Bug is in the house. Leafy Bug, good to see you, says, surely this is textbook 1A protected speech. Seems like a totally frivolous action to me. Do you think the plaintiff is relying on the venue being generally anti-Trump? How else could it not get laughed out of court? DC would probably have been a better choice than SDNY if that's the case. Yeah, I mean, look, based on what I saw in that, I think it's basically an easy dismissal because I don't even know what they want. You know, they're sort of asking for damages for a party that they kind of represent, but not really. It's not a class action lawsuit. I didn't see a single law in there. I don't think Faith clipped all 53 pages, but you know, are they citing to any? We're seeing some quotes that they're referencing different judges and different opinions and different facts of law. They're saying that the Constitution doesn't say something. Well, they better tell us what the authority is for that, because a lot of people have differing opinions on what the Constitution does say. So what is the authority that says what they're claiming is reality? They didn't put any of that in any of the slides that we looked at. We have Liberty or Death says, I don't see how this attorney filed this with a straight face. Rule 11 sanctions, please. To prove defamation, you have to show that the use was malicious and false. They admit they have no idea where it comes from. So how do they know where it did not come from? So you can see here, based on the exclamation points that we're seeing. So what happens here when we go through the show is, you know, Faith is capturing questions as they come out in real time. So you notice that Liberty's first comment was a little bit more benign. We had 0 exclamation points in Liberty's first comment. Now, because this comment presumably came when we were further into the lawsuit, when we were deeper, 3 exclamation points. Look at that. 3 full exclamation points. Rule 11 sanctions, please. The first request was just, hey, Rule 11 sanctions, this is ridiculous. Then when we got to about page 43, we get 3 exclamation points. I told you it was ridiculous. Liberty agrees. Sharon says, to a certain segment of the population, everything Trump says or does is criminal and needs to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, as well as generating any matter of civil litigation. I think the only ones really profiting from this are the lawyers. Yeah. I'd be curious what that lawyer charged for that document. Hopefully they didn't pay too much for it. We have Ryan says, perhaps if this China virus lawsuit wins, Spain and Germany should seek reparations with regard to the designation Spanish flu and the German measles. Yeah. Yeah, you know, and I take offense to I'm Italian, and when somebody says Italian meatballs, it's a little bit pejorative there. You know, I don't know. Maybe I should sue somebody. Woodworking Medic says, if this lawsuit goes somewhere, does that set precedents for Ilhan, Rashida Tlaib, AOC to be sued for anti-Israel Jewish rhetoric? Seen a large uptick in attacks on Jewish people, especially since the squad started speaking out. It's a good question, Woodworking. You know, first of all, I think this lawsuit is not going to go anywhere, but let's say that it did, right? What if you're somebody who says, you know, what Donald Trump said was wrong and it was defamatory, and he is responsible for some of this anti-Asian violence, and he does owe them all $1 for their museum. Well, what if you just applied that standard across the board? What if every time anybody criticized anybody that happened to have a political or let's say a racial or ethnic demographic component to themselves, well, if you criticize them, even if it has nothing to do with their race or their origin or their ethnicity, if they happen to have an ethnicity, well, maybe they're taking it as your criticism about their political stance as condemnation of their ethnicity. And then if that's the case, now that's defamatory. And if that's the case, now you can be sued, and you too can go get $1 for your entire ethnic community if that standard is put in place. We have the doctor in the house says, imagine if you believe liberal orthodoxy enough, you ground a BS lawsuit on it. No one has said it definitely had an animal vector. There are many facts, fewer in sight, that point to a manufactured source. This is what happens when you live in an echo chamber. LOL, the First Amendment doesn't apply. Yeah, and it just doesn't apply just because. It just doesn't. Yeah, if you're the president, just, hey, you're too powerful. So the First Amendment doesn't apply. I don't know where that is in the Constitution, but that lawyer does. We have this. Seriously, was this suit pro se? Did this attorney get his JD from the University of American Samoa Law School? I don't know. Oh, and there it is. We got the trifecta. Now Liberty's at full, what is it? It's full comedy relief now at this point in time because it's just so bad. Leafy Bug says, if this succeeds, then people who live in the Zika forest along with the Ebola River and the West Nile of not along but many other stretches of the Nile will all be lawyering up. Yeah, I know. Yeah, not to mention, I mean, you know, the Amazon River is going to be real in some legal hot water when Jeff Bezos finds out that there's this sort of overlap between that name also, because we have a big problem. Anki Woe is here, says, with all the Asian American lawyers in this country, this lawsuit is a joke. Sounds like it was written by a CCP hack. Hi, Z. We have Liberty or Death says, I'm wondering how the lawyer established jurisdiction in SDNY, considering President Trump is a citizen of Florida. Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe he has a residence there, or I don't know what. I honestly don't know what they're doing, and I think that the lawsuit supports the fact that they don't either. They have no idea what they're doing. Anki Woe is finishing up this segment, says, for the record, I'm an American. I'm an Asian American, and I'm offended by this lawsuit claiming to represent me and embarrassed. Well, Anki Woe, you know, sounds like you don't want that dollar on your behalf. Well, I don't blame you. I wouldn't want that dollar either. I don't even know what they're upset about, but okay. Thank you for the comment, Anki. Glad you're here. Glad that we can all have a little bit of fun with some of this ridiculousness. I know that it kind of is, you know, in that gray area, but a little bit silly. So I think it's fun. Thanks for those great questions. All of those came over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. If you want to support the show, that's the place to do that, and we really appreciate it. We've got an event coming up on June 12th, law enforcement interaction training. So go register for that at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Okay, so let's get into the next story, the next segment. We are going to be revisiting the Capitol Hill riots. John Earle Sullivan, one of the Capitol Hill rioters, is now trying to get $90,000 back. If you recall, we were talking about this guy back on January 6th. He was running around the Capitol grounds and taking a lot of video footage of a lot of the mayhem that was going on that day. And he got some pretty good footage, actually. So good, in fact, that he sold it to a number of different media companies, including NBC and CNN. He made something like $75,000 to $90,000. Now the government is seizing that money. They're saying, you can't have that. That's ill-gotten gains. You got that from your criminal behavior, from your criminal conduct, and we're going to seize it. Well, he's trying to get that money back. He says, I need this for my life. I need this for my bills and my finances and my legal representation. And the government just issued a big memorandum saying, no, you don't. We're not going to give it back. We're going to tease out what's going on here. Let's take a quick look at Law and Crime. They say from their article written by Aaron Keller over the weekend, says that the government defends seizure of $90,000 from the defendant who sold his video to CNN and NBC. So while CNN and NBC and everybody was like, really, sort of hysterical over this, they had no problems handing one of these insurrectionists $90,000 for the footage. Oh, you almost just wrecked American democracy? How about we send you a check, though, for what you got on that cell phone? Okay. Federal authorities have seized more than 90 grand from a Utah bank account owned by the defendant charged with playing a role on the January 6th siege. The defendant, John Earle Sullivan, we just saw him. He licensed the video he recorded of the throngs of protesters outside the courthouse. Sullivan filed court papers describing himself as legitimately self-employed as a documentarian, asked that the government return the money. Okay, so sort of this is a legitimate exercise of my power. I'm a journalist, and so journalists have certain protections under the First Amendment, and we give them access to certain things. Not the Capitol building during a riot, but I understand what this guy's attempting to do. According to documents on file in the U.S. District Court, Sullivan spoke with federal authorities several times after the deadly breach, beginning the very next day. He told investigators he was present when Ashley Babbitt was shot and killed and provided video of the incident. So that's why it was so valuable, because it was a very important video, right? There were a lot of people there, but not everybody caught and captured the shooting of Ashley Babbitt. Defendant's recording, which is still live on YouTube, we have a clip of it here in another slide, contains statements federal prosecutors have attributed to Sullivan, which suggests he was not merely just a passive observer. Quote, he said, apparently, there are so many people, let's go, this S is ours, F yeah, he said at one point, according to prosecutors. We accomplished this, he said. We did this together, F yeah, we are all in part of this history. Let's burn this down. We got to get this burned, he said. It's our house, MFers. We are getting this. There he is. Sullivan is being charged with all of these different violations. You can see here, they include civil disorder. They include entering, remaining on restricted grounds, disorderly and disruptive conduct. We've got possession of a dangerous weapon on Capitol grounds, false statements, a lot of other charges. See them all here, but you'll notice they have a different forfeiture section down here. So basically, as part of this document, the grand jury document, they're also saying we're gonna seize all that money. We're gonna take the proceeds that you got as a result of this unlawful activity. Here is a quick snippet of some of the footage. Now you'll see up here in the top right, courtesy John Sullivan. This is from WUSA 9. And so I clipped this from YouTube. So I think it's all YouTube friendly, but just bear in mind, this of course is footage from the Capitol building. I just want to play this so you can understand what they're talking about. We're going to take a look at the memo from the government explaining why they should continue to seize this $90,000. This is some of the stuff that they reference in the memo. Here it is.
More water. I need more water. It's a revolution. Let's take this. This ours.
According to the Department of Justice, 26-year-old John Sullivan is charged with one count of knowingly entering or remaining in any restricted building or grounds without lawful authority.
Let's burn this down. I can't believe this is reality. We accomplished this. We did this together. Yeah. This is history.
One count of violent entry and disorderly conduct on Capitol grounds.
This is our house.
So you heard a couple of his quotes in there. We read the quotes. That's the video that they're talking about. Still have a lot of questions about what happened on that day, but we're going to see if we have a commission that forms in the Senate and if they do anything other than just try to politically steamroll their opponents. If they actually inquire about anything, I'll be curious as to what they find. We go back to the article before we take a quick look at what is in the memo. Government determined that the defendant received at least $90,875 in payments from at least 6 companies for the rights to the footage. We're talking $89,875 in payments went into his bank account. $1,000 went to Venmo, registered to his phone number and another personal bank account. Invoices say that he sold footage to CNN on January 6th for $35,000. So CNN is paying good money for this to an insurrectionist. And by the way, John Earle Sullivan, we talked about him. He's sort of a total outcast, it sounds like, from both sides of the political spectrum. So he sort of has some connections to BLM, but they sort of disavowed him. They threw him out of their organization. So it sounds like he was sort of trying to get into, maybe become a MAGA person, but they threw him out of the organization. And so he's kind of just this, nobody wants to be around this guy because he's so toxic. Now, You can be the judge of what that means, if anything. But CNN bought footage from him for $35,000. We have Australian Broadcasting for $2,500. NBC Universal paid another insurrectionist $35,000. And then Left Right LLC paid an insurrectionist $5,000. So we got big media here really kind of funding the insurrection to some degree. I mean, they're paying $90,000 for that. Sounds like they funded it. Interesting. The defendant's attorneys filed the invoices while describing Sullivan as legitimately self-employed as a documentarian, want pre-trial release. And the government is saying, no, this is all legal grounds. At the outset, defendant notes that he needs the funds in the seized bank account to pay his rent and household necessities. He says that the proceeds of the seized bank account are not the product of criminal activity alleged in the indictment. He's saying that the defendant is deprived of the needed assets in violation of due process. Prosecutors said, no, we don't agree with that. Let's take a look at what the memo has to say here. Government memorandum. This is filed out of the DC Circuit, as almost all of these are. This was filed a couple days ago. I think this was on Friday. 28 pages. Again, we're not going to go through the whole thing, but I showed you previously that the grand jury, when they indicted him, they had a forfeiture allegation in there, finding probable cause to say that the funds at issue are forfeitable, so that they can actually take those. They don't have to wait until after a verdict. They're giving us a little bit of a background here on what happened, so I want to cover this briefly. At various times in his statements to law enforcement, defendant has claimed he was at the Capitol only to document and report. So what we're sort of talking about here is legitimate activity versus criminal activity. And what he's going to be saying is that, yes, I was technically in the building, so maybe that alone, maybe that trespass, that entry of the building by itself was a criminal act. But the thing that he was doing inside the building, which is documenting and recording what was happening there, is more in alignment with some of the journalistic protections that we have. You know, we sort of allow, you know, I'm not a free speech journalist attorney, but there are some additional protections to journalists for kind of doing their duty in the furtherance of free speech in this country. And so what they're trying to do is separate the two out. Yes, he was in the building. Yes, that was criminal activity, but the video recording itself was not criminal activity. If he were there, you know, spray painting things or smashing computers or taking Nancy Pelosi's laptop or putting his feet on her desk or any one of those other things, walking out with the podium, right? All of that was criminal activity. That would have been theft. That would have been removal of property from within the facility. This wasn't. This is sort of just documenting things, more analogous to a journalist. So he's making that argument. And if you take that argument one step further, if you sort of extend that, extrapolate that out, well, if what he was doing inside was lawful, physically being inside was unlawful, but what he was doing in there was lawful, according to his argument, not something that I necessarily buy, but if you extrapolate that, then the proceeds that he got from that lawful activity of recording the footage would be outside the scope of the forfeiture indictment of that original document that gave them authority to go seize those funds. So this is where he's sort of trying to tease one out from the other. Not so sure that it's going to work. The defendant admitted to law enforcement, however, that he has no press credentials. Investigation has not revealed any connection between any journalistic organizations prior to the events of January 6th. So in other words, they don't buy it. He posted on January 6th a video from on or about January 5th, which he states to the camera. I mean, didn't I kind of make up a background, though, on the fly a little bit? I think I made up, what did I say I was? Oh, yeah, I was just a journalist, but I use that all the time. I'm just a journalist. I'm here recording. I got my camera on my shoulder. Literally, I have my big-ass camera on my shoulder right here, and I have my gimbal, so it kind of looks like it. Yeah, I'm just here recording the situation. Yeah, live streaming. Look, I have people on my live stream. That's why I pulled it back out. Defendant also said on his live stream video that he posted on 11th through 13th of December, says, I don't make money off of it, so I don't consider myself a journalist. Uh-oh. But as far as like reporting stuff like I am now, I'm an activist too. So like it kind of plays hand in hand. But as far as like being a journalist, it would be cool to be one. I don't have anything against it. So in fact, he's not a journalist. Not a journalist. Not a journalist. On January 6th, however, he was captured in recordings by other individuals shortly after exiting the Capitol, expressing excitement that he captured the shooting of the woman on the film. The defendant stated, everybody's going to want this. Nobody has it. I'm selling it. I could make millions of dollars. The defendant also spoke like someone on speakerphone, stating, I brought my megaphone to instigate S. I was like, guys, we're going inside. We're effing S up. I'm going to make these Trump supporters F all this S up. Oh, see that? I'm going to make these Trump supporters F all this S up. I mean, you'll see. I have it all. I have everything on camera. Everything I just told you. I mean, everything. Trust me when I say my footage is worth like millions of dollars. I'm holding on to that S. So pretty impactful statement right here, right? You know, a lot of people were trying to say that this guy was a MAGA maniac, somebody who was out there part of the Trump crowd, allegedly trying to steal the country on that day. I guess we've talked about this. In America now, if you take the podium from the Congress building, you control the country. So we learned that from the media and a lot of our elected officials this past January 6th. I didn't know that, didn't learn that in law school, but apparently that's a thing now. So this guy, many people were saying he was one of those people. He wanted the podium. He wanted that special ring and all the power associated with it. But sounds like maybe he wasn't. He says, I'm going to make these Trump supporters F all this S up. But I mean, you'll see. I have it all. I have everything on camera. So it kind of sounds like to me he was sort of instigating the Trump supporters. Sort of he was like excited to hurry them along. Or maybe those other people were not Trump supporters like this guy was. Maybe they were also instigating stuff like he was. I don't know. I mean, this is in the prosecution's document. They filed this. The government that is prosecuting this guy, prosecuting a lot of the other Capitol Hill rioters from their document. So they know this, that's what he said. Okay, we can continue on. Open source news reporting has also detailed how in the days after January 6th, the defendant repeatedly changed the self-description of the homepage on his website. So he got a lot of activity, so he had to go update his social media pages, of course. On January 10th, he changed the description from activist to athlete to motivational speaker to activist to video journalist to athlete. Over a photo. Oh, so that was all one thing. Activist, athlete, motivational speaker to activist, video journalist, athlete. Okay. He's using threes, which is good. The rule of threes is pretty good about that. You always sort of, keep things in groups of three. On January 11th, that's for marketing, that's for law, that's for sort of establishing themes and telling stories. Rule of three is a good one. On January 11th, 2021, he again updated that text to video journalist, activist, and athlete. Changed the image to a loop from his video at the Capitol, and then he just called himself a video journalist. So he's going through a little bit of an identity crisis, which is very common in 2021. So on February 15, 2021, prior to a hearing on pretrial release conditions, his attorney filed a pleading with the court attaching receipts for services documenting the defendant's employment. I would like to see what those receipts look like. Based on the pleadings, the government determined he received just under $91,000. We went through that. Procedural history. It's working its way up the courts. They're defining what proceeds mean. Warrants were served. The government seized a total balance of $62,800 from the bank account. So he made about 90. Looks like he spent around 28 grand. I wonder where all that went. On May 19th, grand jury returned a superseding indictment that added weapons charges, false statement charges, and forfeiture allegations. Oh, so that's brand new. So he's got new charges coming. It says that he obstructed, influenced, impeded official proceedings. So he got some weapons charges now. They're saying here, the argument, it's well established that the government has an interest in obtaining full recovery of all forfeitable assets. The defendant's request for a hearing to challenge the seizure of the funds should not stand. They're saying it's based on probable cause. Here are a couple quick details. They're saying that his bare bones assertion that the funds are needed for household expenses does not merit a pre-trial hearing. So it sounds like what he wants to do is just basically schedule this for a hearing. Say, courts, I need this money. Let's have a hearing about this. The prosecution is coming back and saying, well, just the fact that you need it, that's not enough. In fact, the threshold has to be considerably higher. So a couple other standards here, laying down some rules for us. We have Cayley versus the United States. Supreme Court is telling us that pretrial seizures require probable cause for two elements. Number one, that the defendant has committed an offense permitting forfeiture and that the property at issue has the requisite connection to the crime. So I think this is really where they're going to be hanging their hat on. The idea being that the recording of the video itself is not closely connected to the crime. The crime really being the breaching of the Capitol building. It's the trespass. It's going inside. But the recording of the video, once inside, is not a close nexus to the criminality. But I don't think it's going to hold up. In effect, the defendant asks to extend the qualified right to pretrial hearings from the right to counsel context to household expenses. Sixth Amendment concerns do not necessarily translate. So this is right to counsel arguments we see here. We've got Chief Judge. So in a prior segment, we talked about a lawsuit that was filed by the Chinese Civil Rights Coalition. And you'll notice that in that document, we didn't see much of this. We didn't see any citations. Here we actually have some citations. So this is what you'd be looking for in a legitimate document. Another reason the government says that he should not get the money back: in any event, the defendant's threshold showing of necessity for the seized funds is undoubtedly inadequate. So they're saying he hasn't shown that he actually needs this. Courts say that in the Sixth Amendment context, every court has addressed the issue that found the defendant's merely conclusory allegation that he lacks funds to get an attorney is insufficient to trigger the Monsanto hearing. Instead, what does a defendant have to do? They must present some evidence that he will be deprived of counsel of choice if he cannot access the seized assets. So it's a little bit of a different standard, right? Think about these from two different perspectives. One, if you're a defendant and the government comes and they seize your entire bank account, one way that you can approach that is you can just say, hey, government, I need that money so that I can go hire an attorney. Well, if that's all the evidence you've got, just a claim, I need it. You need the money back for what? For an attorney. Okay, well, we need more than that, is what this court is saying. We need something very specific. We need you to show us what the attorney is, how much they cost, what your financial records look like, what would make it impossible for you to retain the attorney of your choice. And if that impossibility is directly related to the seizure of your funds, then maybe the court will consider opening up those funds only for the limited purpose of giving you the exact funding necessary to provide for your legal defense. So it's sort of like asking mom for money for school or for a dance or whatever you're doing. You know, mom, I need $20. What does she always say to you? What does mom say to you? For what? What do you need that for? $20 for what? Pizza? No, you get $5 for pizza. Okay, that's it. Get out of here. $20 is too much. So here they're saying, well, you come back and show us what you need. Now, when you go to your mom and you say, Mom, look, Mom, you know, the Ferris wheel's $1. I got to buy some popcorn. That's $1. I got to do this. And okay, well, you get $8.50 then, right? And then when you get home, you got to do the dishes and do the chores. Love you, Mom. But the point is, it's very, very specific. This complaint continues on. They're saying that the defendant assertion falls short of even the undoubtedly inadequate standard, where the defendant said in a sworn declaration, he said specifically, beyond the money seized, I do not have any funds to pay Attorney Belezo's retainer. We said, okay, well, that's not enough. We need a lot more information. We need to know about your dependents and about all of your revenue and about money and cash on hand and money in savings and money in checking accounts. Not just a bare suggestion that you can't afford it. That's not good enough. Here, the defendant in this case, Sullivan, submitted no declaration, no financial affidavit, no banking statements. He has not provided any information about his assets outside his bank, his account ending in 7715, or anything else. No detailed sources of income, no government understanding about his employment. No, he's currently employed by his father. No other assets, descriptions, nothing. So the government is aware of at least one other bank account. He has a positive balance in there. So the government knows where your money is, folks. He says the defendant bears the burden of persuasion to establish the bona fide financial need to use the seized funds to maintain basic necessities. The motion's conclusory statements fall well short. Couple more here. The seized funds are traceable to and they're sufficiently connected to the defendant's obstruction of a proceeding. So this goes to that second prong. He's saying that when he went in the building and was just recording the footage, that was not close enough. That was not close enough as a nexus to the criminality. Video is not a crime, is his argument. Prosecutor here is saying, yeah, it is. The defendant's motion asserts that the proceeds of the seized bank account are not the product of the criminal activity alleged in the indictment. That criminal activity was entering the building, not recording. He's not charged with recording a video. He's charged with recording and breaking into the building. The 19-page affidavit on which he relied contains no disclaimers of traceability. Should this court reach this issue, they're saying that based on the totality of the facts and evidence specific to this case, a strong nexus between these proceeds and the crime exists. basically talking about this concept of a gateway function. The governing standard for the causal connection between the proceeds and the crime is a but-for test. Under the but-for test, which has been adopted by DC, proceeds mean that the property that a person would not have obtained or retained but for the commission of the offense. So a very important concept in the law. What they're saying here is that if he would not have committed the crime of breaking into the congressional building, he would not have captured the video footage, right? He would have been outside the building. So he wouldn't have been able to see anything from the inside of the building. In particular, we're talking about the Ashley Babbitt footage that CNN and NBC paid almost $70,000. They paid $70,000 for. So if he would not have been in the building, he would have never captured that footage. So the 70,000 plus the other 1,000, total $90,875 would have never gotten that if he had not committed the original crime of breaking into the building. So I think that makes sense logically. They say the defendant would not have obtained the footage inside the Capitol at all had he not unlawfully breached and remained in the building. He was there with close proximity, frontline vantage points. So they just go through everything. He even tells officers trying to usher him in, he says, we're just recording. There's too many people to be acting like this. Like you're not solving anything. He says, I'm just recording events. It's not worth it. I'm just trying to record. I'm just filming. No freedom of the press. See what he's doing? At another point, he tells someone, that's why I'm a photographer. That's why you got to have ID. But in the speaker lobby doors, he tells one of the law enforcement officials going in the doorway, we want you to go home. I'm recording, and there's so many people, they're going to push their way up here. Right? Meanwhile, the commercial value of the footage was substantially the result of his proximity as a front-line participant. He was the eyewitness of the video shooting. That's why they paid $70,000 for it. If he was outside the building, well, they had a lot of people recording that stuff. That's not worth anything. This is worth a lot because it's the shooting of Ashley Babbitt. Defendant boasted at least twice upon leaving the Capitol that he would make millions of dollars from his footage. It bears to mention that although the defendant's proceeds happen to pertain to video footage and to entail transaction with the media, the government's theory of forfeiture is content neutral and serves content neutral purposes. So has nothing to do with any political ideology or anything like that. They're saying it's just a matter of fact. He got money in the commission of a crime and they want to seize that. So they say, should the court reach this issue, there's probable cause supporting the proceeds of the crime to be seized. They request that the government deny or that the court deny the defendant's motion to release the seizure order and forbid seizure of other counts. They want the trial to continue. They want the court to deny a pre-trial evidentiary hearing at this time, signed off by Channing D. Phillips, acting U.S. attorney. It's signed off by Candace Wong here. So I think the government's probably going to hold on to that money. Probably. Now, we do know that he may have some other sources of funds. So he is actually writing a book. Here's Earle Sullivan here on Channel 13 Fox News.
Sullivan reads words from the first chapter of his unfinished book, the one he's been writing while waiting for his trial.
When I was on house arrest, I just sat there and just wrote it all out.
Sullivan is writing about what happened at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th and the groups he says were involved.
Show how these two groups kind of, came together in forming that narrative that built up to the Capitol.
Sullivan was arrested in the summer of 2020 for organizing a protest in Provo where shots.
Yeah, so that's some of his other protests. I think he was with the BLM organization or an Antifa organization, one of those two organizations, and they threw him out. They're like, no, we don't like you. So that's John Earle Sullivan. Let's take some questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We have Sharon Quidney says, here's yet another example of government overreach and total annihilation of our civil liberties. They probably seized his money to help pay off some of the debt from the insane spending spree they've been on lately. Wonder how many other folks they're going to come after. We got Bessa. Thank you, Sharon. We got Bessa Miento says Sullivan is an Antifa BLM activist who bragged about infiltrating MAGA by wearing a MAGA hat. Yeah, I that's what I thought I had heard that. And Sharon says, I wanted to, insane spending spree they've been on lately. Yeah, there was another story, I think, that there was, 300, 400 cases now total that they're prosecuting now. So his is being added to that list. And Sharon, you made me think about this. I wonder how many other people are having their assets seized in general, right? We know this one is a big number. This is $70,000, 90 in total, because it came from very, very, very viral footage. We all saw the footage. Everybody knew about this. But what about other defendants? I wonder if they're seizing anything from them. Besamiento says, yeah, he's a BLM supporter. Definitely heard that. We got Sharon Quidney says, yes, it's a raindrop in the ocean, but if the government gets away with stomping on this citizen, they'll feel empowered to come after anybody who said or did anything pro-Trump, including voting. Yeah, forfeiture is actually a big issue. I didn't really talk about this story to dive into the forfeiture issue, but the government does seize stuff all the time and big chunks of money. I mean, they'll charge you with a drug crime and then hold on to your car, forever. Why? I don't know. It was used in the commission of a crime, along with a laptop that was in there, a lot of cash, stuff that may or may not be connected to the crime. In my opinion, it's not even close, but they can connect it just based on the fact that it's in close proximity, and they take a lot of money. You're seeing a lot of forfeiture reform and civil asset forfeiture reform being discussed in this country in close proximity to criminal law, as it should be. It's actually a very big issue. Leafy Bug is in the house, says BLM and Antifa have only distanced themselves from this guy because they don't want to be tied to the January 6th riot. It's really strange how he isn't in jail awaiting trial like the other trespassers. Just happened to be in the right place to video Babbitt's shooting. I wonder what else he knows. He seems to be getting special treatment. Yeah, I'd be curious. We have Liberty or Death says, wow, look at all those law and case citations in this complaint. Interesting. I know. It's, oh yeah, they are supposed to be there. Oh yeah, she just forgot. And the other one, silly. We have NY Renal MD says, I stipulate for the court, my client is an idiot, not an activist or an athlete. I see what you're doing. Idiots are also protected by the First Amendment. Shame on the prosecution. So yeah, he's basically just agreeing. Stipulation means you're just agreeing to some fact. So rather than us trying to duke this out, activist, athlete, journalist, we just say, okay, we all agree, moron, not too bright. Right. I'm not calling him a moron, but I get the joke. We have NY says, sorry, judge, I need a lawyer to prove I need a lawyer. Yeah. We have good to see you. We have Chaskow says forfeiture before being convicted of anything smacks of no due process. Civil forfeiture is abused by the government all the time, needs to be reformed and or eliminated in most cases. Yeah, it's actually a big issue, right? And I of course, this audience is highly informed on these issues. But it is a big issue. I wasn't sort of talking about the story for that, but it is, right? You sort of see what happens. The government just says, well, we think that that's our money now. And you say, well, I haven't been convicted of anything. What happened to my presumption of innocence? He hasn't pled guilty. His trial hasn't happened yet. He hasn't been convicted. The government just gets a warrant and just goes into your bank account and just takes money out of it. And you got to go fight to get it back. And you got to prove sort of that you're not guilty of that. Is that a fair thing? Not really. We have Jack Elia says, is the purpose of demanding complete listings of the intended use of the money so that the court's officers can potentially initiate tracking and surveillance on the activities of those to whom it goes? It's a good question. And the answer, I think, would be yes, right? You're still under investigation. So you're opening that up. And they probably already have access to most of that. I mean, they knew about all of his other bank accounts. So in their initial warrants, presumably the judge said, yeah, you can monitor all of those things. Go take a look at whatever you want. And the basis of that authority, of course, was the Capitol Hill riots. This guy's a dangerous insurrectionist. So the judge, whatever you need, whatever you want, 90 grand, it's yours. Enjoy it. All right. Great questions. All of those came over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Thank you so much for your support over there. And be sure to check out our upcoming events because they are a lot of fun. We just had our monthly meetup. Really enjoyable. We've got another one coming up next month. And then guess what? The month after that. And we hope you can join us for all of them at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. All right. So we have a short segment here to wrap up the day. Big Gretchen Whitmer out of Michigan. We've talked about her a lot. Somebody who's been very aggressive with her COVID lockdown protocols. And we've had some opportunity to kind of poke fun at her over the last year or so. Well, over the weekend, she was busted, violating her own COVID orders. Don't you hate that? Well, we're going to talk about it. I know. Let's get into it. This comes over from Breitbart. Gretchen Whitmer apologizes. Okay, listen. Any one of these people, if they want to apologize and a little bit of a mea culpa, we'll take it. She says she admits she made a mistake in violating the coronavirus orders at an East Lansing bar. This was published over by Kyle Olson at Breitbart, May 23rd, yesterday. Breitbart News obtained a photo of Whitmer and her appointed Chief Operations Officer, Tricia Foster, among a group of 13 people. Very important number, 13. Dive bar in a college town on Saturday. Whitmer's office refused to acknowledge to Breitbart News, but released a statement to Eric Lloyd of 9 and 10 News. And let's take a quick look at what the law says first before we get into this. Here's the law. She wrote here, gatherings are prohibited at food service establishments, whether indoor or outdoor, unless, so gatherings at restaurants, they are not allowed. They are prohibited. You cannot eat at a restaurant unless food and beverages is only permitted in designated dining areas where patrons are seated. Groups of patrons are separated by at least 6 feet. Okay. Got some guidelines, 6 feet, and no more than 6 patrons are seated together. So we got a 6 and 6 rule. 6 feet, 6 people max at a table, booth, or a group of fixed seats. Groups of patrons do not intermingle. And I'm curious. I don't know what that intermingle means. I mean, I know what intermingle means. I don't know what they think intermingle means. But let's count this. We got 6 people, 6 feet of distance at a dining facility. We see some violations here. Let's count them. We've got 1 here. We've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This must be the CFO over here. 6. We got 7 over here. Big Gretchen is here. 7, 8, 9, 10. 11. 12. Oh, no, 13 people. Oh my gosh, there's 13 people here. Let's do a distance measure. Oh no, right here. What do we say this is? If we're going to measure this, probably like, I don't know, 18 inches maybe, which is definitely not 6 feet. We're gonna measure that at 18 inches. I would guess that. And that might even actually be closer. Definitely not 6 feet. This one looks a little bit far here. Maybe we've got some distance here. We're going to calculate that. Gosh, I mean, even that's like 2 feet, maybe on a good day, 2 feet. Probably all of these other ones, folks, it's not even worth measuring. You know, this one, I mean, we're talking like inches, a matter of inches between this lady and this guy. I think they're touching right here. I mean, first of all, somebody should be arrested, I think, for this pair. Probably are in violation. You know, look, we know what the legal limit is in Michigan. It's 6. This is over double the legal limit, okay? Twice the legal limit. We hear about this in DUIs all the time. Every time a prosecutor comes out and they say, oh my gosh, he was almost twice the legal limit. It's like this big, dramatic catastrophe. Over double the legal limit right here. We have 13 people. Legal limit is 6. Well, it's a travesty of justice. Let's see what happens. We have Governor Whitmer. She released a statement. Throughout the pandemic, she says, I've been committed to following public health protocols. Yesterday, I went with friends to a local restaurant. As more people arrived, the tables were pushed together. Because we were all vaccinated, we didn't stop to think about it. In retrospect, I should have thought about it. I'm human. I made a mistake, and I apologize. Well, Big Gretch, apology accepted. Now, are you going to end your stupid orders now? Are you going to do that now? Let's see. She gave her statement. The group shot of the 13 individuals appeared to violate the restaurant capacity order. Now, this is not an old order, okay? This was issued on May 15th. Gathering limitations. We already read the rules. 6x6 rule. Clear violation. Last week, according to Tori Sachs, which is an organization called the Michigan Freedom Fund, she said last week, Whitmer refused to immediately end her ridiculous restrictions, like a maximum of 6 patrons per table for indoor dining. Last week, she wouldn't refuse it. So, okay. Now, Whitmer has once again completely disregarded her own rules. Whitmer orders rules she and her staff don't follow themselves, while Michiganders and businesses suffer. She must end her restrictions immediately. So now that we know look, we're all human. We all make mistakes, right? Not all of us are the governor. Not all of us have to, live and set examples for everybody else. So she's sort of held to a higher standard, but we still sort of, give people the ability to make a mistake and own it. As long as they sort of correct their mistake, we want people to sort of move in the right direction. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I talk about this all the time. People come in, they're good people. They made a little bit of a mistake, no problem. We're going to help you get back on track. So what would we be expecting from Governor Whitmer? To end the stupid rule. She put it in place. Can she end it? Is she going to do that? Michigan Freedom Fund called on Whitmer to immediately lift all orders this week. A recommendation the governor ignored. Oh, there you go. So nothing. Oh, so nothing. So she violates it and nothing. So apology rejected. How about that? I accepted it and I rejected it. Back your direction. Let's take a look at Liberty or Death. Says Whitmer should start a show, Governors Gone Wild, starring her, Newsom, and Cuomo. She was on Girls Gone Wild when she was younger, so she has the experience. Is that true? Is that a fact? No kidding. Wow. Okay. I don't want to watch that show, Liberty. I don't want anything to do with that. I think that's an awful idea. I love you, but that should be canceled. I would cancel Girls Gone Wild starring Newsom and Cuomo. Oh gosh. And now that I really think about it, yeah, that's horrendous. Leafy Bug says those rules only apply to the little people. Yeah, they do. When you're governor, you get a different set of rules. You can do whatever you want, like take trips and fly all over the place and have other people pay for them. We have our last question coming from Seen and Unseen. Says it's not surprising our Governor Whitmer did that, considering her recent trip to Florida during a Michigan travel ban was a chartered flight that was paid for by a nonprofit. It's so ridiculous. I have so much disdain for these people who just tell all of us how to live our lives and then go and do the exact opposite. Just go do whatever they want. Then they get on the media and they tell us all, you losers have to go get this and you have to go do this and you have to go do this because you're so dumb. And since you're so dumb, we're going to pass all these rules because we're smarter than you and we're in positions of power. And we get to tell you how to live your life. But we're not going to follow those same rules because those are just for you sheep people. And we're just going to continue to live like wolves that are mauling America at every turn. So that is sounds exactly right. Like a lot of our elected officials. So she's just right on par. That was Governor Whitmer. And of course, all of those questions came over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We had some awesome new people sign up over the weekend. We have Deeds13 is now in the house. We got Dot Queen. Welcome to you. We have FL Teacher, Florida Teacher. We have 13 SPD Damon is in the house, and we have Social Q. Super excited. Welcome, everybody. We have a lot of cool stuff coming up. We've got a June 12th event, and then we have another event, I think, at the end of June, which is going to be our next monthly meetup. So you're all going to be joining us, I hope. And a lot of great questions came over from NY Renal MD, Pinky 2, Liberty, and others. Funny show today. Thanks for the great comments. And if you want to ask comments, you can do so by going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Download a copy of my free book. Download the slides that we went through today. You can also take a look at the impeachment party documents. If you want to impeach anybody, you can download my existence systems template, which is available if you are a Locals supporter as well. You can share links throughout the day and connect with some great people. We have another monthly meetup. So I told you at the beginning of the show that we did this one. So May 22 is in the can. It was a lot of fun. I really appreciate everybody who signed up and was there. We had about 35 people at one point, and it was just a lot of fun. Very, very, very good time. So thank you for that. Next one's coming up on June 26th. We also have law enforcement interaction training coming up on June 12th. That's going to be at 12 noon Eastern time, which is going to be 9 a.m. Arizona time. We're going to talk about dealing with the police. So I'm still working on my final presentation, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And I want to also tell you about a third channel that I just started last night. It's ridiculous. We're talking crypto, folks. I mentioned on my on a previous show that I was very interested in cryptography and cryptocurrencies. If you've been on this channel for some time, you know that we talked about Balaji Srinivasan. We've talked about decentralization. We've talked about sort of these freedom concepts that I think are going to be built into technology, if you can fathom that. Very interesting space. And we're looking at charts that look like this. I want to show you something that we are talking about on channel number 2. This is what is called Trading View, and I have not made a video about this yet specifically, but I want to show you something that happened today. So very briefly, of course, if you are not interested in cryptos at all, you can bail on out of here, but these are 8 different coins that I just have here on Trading View that we can see. We have Bitcoin up here. We have Ethereum over here, which is a sort of the second biggest coin in the market. We have what's called ADA, which is Cardano, which is the proof of stake coin that a lot of people are interested in. We heard that Elon Musk was very unhappy with Bitcoin because of its power consumption. And so Cardano has been sort of a different technology that's based on proof of stake, not proof of work, like Bitcoin is. We have Solana, which is another interesting coin that I'm keeping an eye on. Internet Computer Protocol, very interesting coin. This coin is going to be something that is intending to replace the entire internet. It's called Internet Computer Protocol. Very interesting coin. You can see that this is actually working its way back up. Was pretty low this afternoon. We have Dogecoin. We've all seen a lot of that in the news. Elon Musk was talking about this coin on Saturday Night Live. Shiba Inu is another sort of knockoff of Dogecoin. You can see this is selling right now for like 0.000010 of a dollar. Very, very inexpensive. Litecoin, been around for a long time, kind of a boring coin, but something that's kind of a staple, one of the earliest coins. And if you'll notice, when we go over here to Bitcoin, what happened here today? What is this really big spike? What happened here? You notice that right at about 1946, something happened. There was a big spike. Bitcoin went up from about 37,000 per coin, all the way up to about 39,000 per coin. So it jumped up about $2,000 in value. And you'll notice that same spike appeared over here in the Ethereum markets. See this major jump right here. We also saw it in the Cardano markets. Big, big spike. Less so, a little bit longer here. What about Doge? Let's take a look at, oh, look at that spike. Big, big Doge spike. So what was that? It was Elon Musk. He tweeted that they're going to be focusing on Bitcoin. They're going to be focusing on a council that's going to be working with all the different miners from around the country to reduce energy consumption, which led a lot of people to think maybe that means Elon's coming back to Bitcoin. Now, I don't like the idea that one person can shift the entire market. This is a scary thing. I don't like that idea, that one person can tweet and the entire market shifts, because here it went up. But what happens when it goes down? And we've seen that historically. We saw a really big dip previously. Historically, May has actually been a rough month for the cryptos, but they're working their ways back up. Anyways, very, very fascinating stuff. If you want to check that out, I have a second channel that is linked down below. It's actually a third channel at this point in time because YouTube is not nice to us on this channel. So we're diversifying a little bit, and we're going to create content on other channels. And if you're interested in this stuff, I would ask you to come and join us along. Keep in mind, I'm still learning a lot, and so I'm going to flub some stuff here and there. I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm counting on all of you to correct me, and we can learn together as this space continues to evolve. Very interesting space, a lot of very cool stuff going on, and so I'm going to be talking about it. It is down in the description below if you want to check that out. Otherwise, my friends, that is it from me. Before we wrap up, one final reminder that I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group, and that means we help people who are facing criminal charges. We love it. We're very good at it. We offer free case evaluations. We have a mission here to help good people find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases and in their lives. And so if you happen to know anybody in the state of Arizona who is facing a criminal charge, whether it's a DUI, a drug offense, a misdemeanor, a felony, anything and everything in between, we can help. We can even help clear up old cases. So we can quash old warrants, get your driver's license back, help you restore your rights so you can vote again, so that you can go apply for federal benefits, possess a firearm. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can do to clear that stuff up and help nudge you on the right path again. So if you want to speak with somebody from our team, we offer free case evaluations. We have an awesome group of people here. We're very passionate about what we do. And so it would mean the world to us if you trusted us enough to send your referrals our way. We'll take very good care of them. We'll make sure they leave our office better than they found us. And that is it, my friends. Thank you for indulging me and all of those little outro projects. I'm really excited about all of them, and I appreciate the support along the way. We are going to be back here same time tomorrow, same place, and I hope to see you here. It's going to be at 4 p.m. Arizona, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on the East Coast for that one Florida man out there. Everybody have a tremendous evening. Have a nice hearty meal. If you haven't eaten already, sleep very well, because we're going to be ready to go tomorrow. I'll see you here. Bye-bye.